Good early afternoon. It's Joyful Christian Mystic Hermit. It's another glorious day. Merry Christmas Day. Born again in Jesus Christ, and He's born again in me. And the Holy Trinity dwells within us. So we're all set. Finally got out of bed. I call it getting up off the cross, and God resurrects me again. Another day. So got up and going. Yes, had to take pain medication. Let me explain, because some may misunderstand or not. Of course, if you don't know, if you haven't had to take it for not just like, having a wisdom tooth out or surgery for 3 days after you take it, but if you have very high level constant pain and have to take it for that, a low dose all the time. I have extended release, so I take one pill in the morning and one at night. And since my arachnoiditis has progressed quite a bit, about 5 weeks ago, boom, up, a headache and everything else, just a lot more pain, thoracic spine, very, very painful, to the point where I couldn't manage it. So I have to take what's called a breakthrough pain med, which I take 1 or 2 a day, hopefully try to keep it to 1. And it's strong. I tried lesser and it didn't work. So unfortunately, have to do what works. But some are confused about pain meds. And it goes this way. And you can look up online. Mayo Clinic site explains very well the difference between those with severe pain or need pain med to those who do not, who maybe have emotional pain or psychological pain or mental pain, as bad as that is, or who started taking drugs just wanting to get high or to have hallucinatory thinking. Now, opioids will not do that. They aren't going to do that. You have to have a hallucinatory drug to have hallucinations. What these pain meds would do for someone who doesn't have high-level pain is, I suppose, make them feel high, like if you've had too much alcohol or enough alcohol to give you some kind of an effect. I don't know, because I've never taken an opioid except when I had very severe pain. But from what I've read, it gives some kind of a high. And that's what appeals to some people, sadly enough, that take it. But an opioid will not give you make you hallucinatory or have hallucination thoughts or anything. So I want to clarify that when I share a vision that I've had, which I have never shared, these are, some of them are over 40 years old or longer. And I've never shared them before, and I'm doing so anonymously, but it's helpful to me to get these things out. And I'm thinking, if I had others that I could read about, like what it was really like, not just reading in some book about something, fantastical, or a vision that is incredible or whatever, and just what it was, to explain how the body feels or what happens or how natural it is, how real it is. And I can sort of help describe what's a corporeal vision, where you actually see a person, a body that you could, like just reach out and as if you could touch the person and they speak to you. Like when my grandmother came back in 1986, wow. I woke up at 3 a.m. on the dot, just awake, boom, just wakened up. And there she was standing by my bed and wore a dress that she had, that I remembered, in the type of dress. And her body was probably like when she was in her late 60s or early 70s, probably in her 70s. I think she was maybe in her 60s when I was born, so it's probably in her 70s. She died when she was 80. And her hair just the same way, and her voice and all. That's a corporeal vision. And she just gave me words. And also another time she came, she put something into my soul, into my chest area, that went right in. It was sort of an amorphous, dark, squarish thing, three-dimensional. And so it had some kind of substance, but just wasn't, you could probably just put your hand right through it, but it went right into my soul. And it was the beginnings of wisdom, she said, the beginnings of wisdom. And the visual was a representation, obviously, because I was so new at any of this that I needed something that was more visual, that would mean something, that I could relate with on the temporal level. But but it's these things like the dream vision I had, or no, it wasn't a dream vision, it was just a vision. I was laying down in the pew praying, and I was laying there because my back was so bad I couldn't sit, and I didn't have pain meds back then, so I wasn't on a pain med. So it wasn't a hallucination. It wasn't from I know somebody mentioned, mind-altering pain drugs. No, they're not mind-altering. They would be if you don't have pain. These meds just go and help take the edge off the pain, and literally the edge. They don't take away the pain. If you ever have to take pain meds, don't keep taking more thinking it's going to take it away. It won't. You have to adapt to always having pain. You just have to keep it at the level that you aren't suicidal from how painful it is. That's what happens to me. I get very suicidal, like I can't bear it. Like yesterday morning, it was the first time in a long time I'd had this thought of, I just got to die, I just got to get away from this. From the arm pain was that severe. But I took a breakthrough pain med, got back down on the bed, and worked on my arm, put these lacrosse ball things that are taped together, and put it in where the muscle gets tight in the thoracic spine from the pain shooting out. I put it right on a certain spot and laid on it, on that hard backrest thing I have, that wedge, and just waited for the stronger pain med to take effect, which didn't take too long. But I knew I was in trouble when I had the feeling and the thought, I just want to die, let me get this over with, just let me get this over with. And would it be so bad, you lose your mind when the pain gets too bad. And that's why you need to take the pain meds. And then I would not dare get in and drive my truck if I did not have pain meds in me. I would not be a competent driver. And that's just the opposite of what people think, and even what the government thinks, But if you have severe pain, you don't want to be behind the wheel, because you are not competent then. That's when you can't function properly. And your whole effort, your whole brain is used trying just to maintain your sanity. And now, it might be different for other people. I don't know. That's how it is. It clears my mind to have the pain meds to get the pain down. The pain is what disrupts my ability to think. I lose memory when the pain's too bad, because my conscious mind just leaves. So these are maybe misconceptions people have about pain meds. They're not mind-altering drugs, but might be if you don't have pain. That's the problem. Doggies, no barky. That little dog, I know you see the doggie over there, but the doggie's walking with its owner. Yeah, the doggie's not looking at you. In fact, there's two doggies, two like you. No, they're not even paying any attention to you. Lovey, stop the barking. Stop now. That's enough. They're enjoying a quiet walk. Lovey, do you want to go inside, Lovey, or stay out? Lovey, Lovey, stop barking or we go inside. Okay, we'll go inside if you bark. Yeah, that's a good boy. That's a good boy. Well, Lovey, it's a nice morning. They're enjoying their walk. Okay, you don't. I know you're excited. So excited to see them. Oh, Lovey, I guess I better follow through on my threat and take them in, or it's not gonna mean anything. We're going in, Lovey, because you barking. You're gonna ruin your nice time outside because of your barking. Can you stop, Lovey? I need to get eye contact. It's like dealing with toddlers. You have to have eye contact. Lovey, don't bark. Don't bark, okay? Be a good boy. Nice and quiet. So anyway, that's a situation with pain meds. And, the pain doctor knows it. We just go through the motions. All his pain patients do. We have to sign a contract and all this, and it's just, you have to just do it. And everyone knows that, we're not safe drivers if we don't have the pain under control. So it's, probably would freak some people out. And I have a little pain pill container and I hide it in my truck in case I would get pulled. You don't want to have something sitting there if you're pulled over because the police aren't going to understand. And I learned my hard lesson when I was in the ER last summer that you tell the truth and they don't believe you if you have to take pain meds, because doctors who aren't pain doctors are very ignorant about the pain meds. They are evidently so used to drug addicts, people who don't have pain but who steal or get pain meds from someone, buy them off the street or steal them from a family member or whatever. I hide my pain meds in the house if anyone's coming over. My daughter I don't have to worry about, but if workers or anything, I hide them because I just don't want to risk. You never know who's going to want to. In fact, I had one worker ask me for a pain pill. He knew I was in a lot of pain and figured I had them. Oh my goodness, of course it was a no, but see, people are, I just want to see what it feels like. I said, no, you don't have pain. It won't feel right for you. And I said, it's illegal. So, but, it's quite a world we live in. But the experiences I have are not hallucinations. I did go to this clinical psychologist who's very adept in the paranormal, as it turned out, fortunately, Dr. Eric, and years ago. And because I thought, that something was wrong with me or what on earth was going on. And he did a lot of question asking and testing and mostly questions and history. And he also knew me already. So, and didn't know this part of me because I just, at that point, I kept thinking everybody else had things like that or viewed things or had dreams like I have. And just, that's not what I thought all my life. That's why it just never freaked me out that I was different in that way too. But a lot of people have them. And this is another reason why I share is that I'm convinced that God will speak to anyone in various ways, including experiences like when I was birthed the infant Jesus. God needed that major mystical experience as a reality for me to realize the reality that Jesus is born in me, through me, and me in him, that the bond is there, the umbilical cord is always there, that translucent cord that was never cut. And in my temporal mind, I was thinking, well, there should be a placenta. I had already had three live births, so I knew the process. And I actually experienced within my body aspects of it, so of a birth. And And there was this infant, but it wasn't a newborn. He was probably, I'd say 3 months old, 2 to 3 months old, suspended, this translucent umbilical cord still attached within me. And it still is. I don't see it, but I know that spiritually it is. And that in effect, Christ is our child. He's our baby, and we are his child. We are his parent, to take care of him and to love him and to nurture him. God was all that representation. God wanted me to recognize and to realize that I was to nurture Christ with my life as a mother would, or as a parent. And a man could have that same vision. Men do have many visions that you would think would be for a woman. When you read of different books and different lives, histories of different mystics and different other people who just have experiences like that, Christians, and ones that have been, verified. So I had my spirit. When I became Catholic. Then anything I would have my spiritual director, this old Irish priest who was so holy and so down to earth, very well grounded and very wise, lots of experience, years of experience. He was a priest. When he died, he'd been a priest 72 years. He was over 99 when he died to this world. And so, I would always have him help discern, is this valid? Is this an actual, vision, or is it a delusion of the devil? And he taught me, and I learned it's good to discern what the devil can do, how the devil, but say that the birth of Christ, see, that would be nothing the devil would do. There would be no point. He would not want that. Unless it was something that I was going to become very prideful or deluded about in some way. And that's not part of my wheelhouse, although I am always on guard against anything like that. But my godmother one time, early on, she wanted to be sort of my director, and liked that role, but I really preferred a priest because of their experience with so many parishioners and souls, guiding souls, and they're trained in it in seminary. And he was in a religious order seminary, so they had actually more training in the spiritual life, plus it was way back. Now parish priests have more training in administration, sadly, but they have to, because they're running an institution, basically, in part, a facility and people and organization. So if you can get a priest who's in a monastery, a monk priest, that's always helpful. If not, though, a parish priest can be outstanding, absolutely outstanding. So these are just little things of learning how to discern different spiritual experiences. And so that's just a little bit of tidbits to say. I have a poem here for you. I've been praying. We have people to pray for. Dorothy, there is a young woman who had been, my dogs, I'm just sort of keeping an eye on them so that they don't pull me down or something here. Doggies, Lovey. Here, let me grab the leash up close to your neck, Lovey. Let me grab it. Here you go. That way you'll calm down a little bit. Can't have you pull me over. If I were a big, strong guy, you wouldn't pull on me, would you? No, you wouldn't. But we're doing it. We're managing, aren't we, Lovey? We're managing it. So, but anyway, right away, boom. Here's an example of a young woman who also, with her children, she got proselytized big time, and left her church, left her her whole family history faith system by somebody who came to the door. And it's more of a sect than a religion. In fact, I'm going to read up a little bit about it. Jehovah Witness. But it is considered to be a sect. And that's okay if, if you're born into that sect. And but it has some belief systems that aren't in keeping with what this person was born and lived, and her parents and her ancestors and all her relatives and their friends. So, and it's to be proselytized at your own front door. That's sort of creepy. Convinced to change your whole life core base faith to something that is more of a sect rather than a religion it just really got to me to think that other people would do that, and that this young woman was obviously maybe vulnerable at that time, or thought, because they know how to do it. They're trained. That the door people, the people who come to the door, often have had training in how to get people into their belief system. And it's one way of doing it, but isn't it better, as we heard from, Scripture and Jesus, to live your life in such a way that other people will want to be what you are? Not go around to doors, knocking and trying to get someone to open the door, let you in, and you basically brainwash them. Convince them that their way isn't right and that you have the answer and you will help them or whatever, take care of them, do this or that, or solve their problems, or meet their vulnerability, or simply just people think, well, I should be polite. And the door knocking people of various sects and cults and things are very, very convincing. As I say, they've had training in how to sell. They're salespeople, basically. And, if you're not looking to be sold a religion or a faith, don't let them in. Just don't. You just have to say, I'm sorry, no thank you. Or what I used to do is I would say, I have information for you to listen to. And one time I said, well, in fact, they started sending 3 people for me. They would come, 3 of them. And instead of the usual 2 for one group, that would be 2 people coming. And I said, well, we're going to walk right over here, because they said 3 people against 1 person isn't very good. I said, we'll go over. And I had another person lined up with a priest. I said, we'll have a conversation that's even, 3 of us and 3 of you. And I want you to hear about my faith. So, because you may want to be that, because I don't want to be your faith. Thank you. And I'm telling you, they scattered. They left. I went out the front porch. They were standing at the door. I said, come on, we're going to walk right over here. I started walking up the drive up to the parish offices, and I looked back. I said, aren't you coming? Oh, no, they got in their cars and left. So you have to sometimes be bold if you do not want what someone's selling. They're salespeople, and they're selling their belief system. And that's great if you want it. If you don't want what they're selling, and it's sad, sometimes you have to really put on the armor of God, not open the door. But I understand people get vulnerable, or maybe they're lonely and they want someone to talk to. I don't know what the case was with this young woman and mother. She's a mother, but she altered her whole life then to get involved and she joined this sect, and her mother's heartbroken. Her children are just living that. They didn't have a choice. They were used to one way, and now all of a sudden they're have to do what their mother chose, basically, for them by door knocking salespeople. So it's not the most, I guess, holy way that we would want to come into faith. It's the evangelizing way is the holy way. That's when we might see the people out knocking on doors, and we wonder, well, what's that all about? And then we go out and ask them, oh, I'm looking for something. Are you out, talking about your religion, or selling something else, and tell me about it. When you approach them, and which I'm sure doesn't happen, but if that would be more the way. Or you meet someone at your workplace or out somewhere, you get to know someone as a friend, and they're of that religion or that faith, and you want to learn more, so you ask them, you get to know them. But it's usually not, it just seems sort of banal to think that you're going to have what is your soul development, your heart, your soul, and your mind for the rest of your life, potentially, and on into eternity, or whatever they think of as heaven, or I don't know. I'm going to like I say, I'm going to do a little research on Jehovah's Witness, because I'm rusty. I know at one time I had found out a little bit about them, but they leave their paperwork. They now send letters to, and I just toss this stuff because I have my path, and it's the one of my ancestors way back to early centuries, as far back as our family history has been traced, which goes way, way back on either side. And it was all Christian. And in fact, my spiritual father one time asked me, why do you always read these old books? The books from, way back that have content or authors from way back. I said, because they've been tried and proven. I said, even the ones in the last century, and take Thomas Merton as an example. He started out and he wrote beautiful works, beautiful writings, actually instrumental in helping me really love the Catholic Church and understand more, and to lose my fear, because I'd been instilled with fear about Catholics, because my parents were instilled that way, and their parents on back, probably back to 1526 or that time period when the Reformation happened, but the split. If I had kept, fortunately I read his early works before he went off the path and became enthralled with Buddhism. And that was okay that he did, but to write, he had a huge worldwide following, trusted him as a Cistercian monk and priest, trusted that his writings would be Christian and what they wanted. They wanted Christian. And then he veers off and starts writing other things and changing his views and sliding it into his writings, and which happens naturally, of course, in his poetry and everything. And I'm just thankful that I didn't read. I went in chronological order of his books, and I didn't read his later books until I found out, and he'd gone off the deep end and had seduced a young woman who was more than half his age. She was like 22 and he was 58, and having an affair with her, and she was even engaged, but he seduced her. He was so famous, and she was a student nurse, and he was in the hospital for a hernia surgery, seduced her from his hospital bed because he's so charming, and he was so famous, and she knew it, and she was, wow, a priest interested in me, it was really a come on. And the devil was so in that. But That's what he wanted, to be a hermit. He was allowed to have his hermit, and then he would sneak off at night, and a friend would come and pick him up from Louisville and take him to this young woman for their affair. And so he was no hermit, you know. He was deceived by the evil one and fell for it himself. And I don't even know to this day, and might not know, and it doesn't matter, I suppose, but I suspect that when he went to the Abbey toward the end of World War II, he was going to be drafted, and he was a teacher, an instructor at St. Bonaventure University in upstate New York for a semester, and at Christmas time he didn't have anything to do. I think his grandfather had died by then. He was reared by his grandfather after his father died, and his mother had died earlier in his life. And so, he didn't really have anyone, and he had wandered around Europe for a while, and then came back to his grandfather because he was out of money, and the grandfather wanted him to settle down and get a job, so he got this teaching job at Bonaventure, teaching English, I think, for a semester. Well, it was supposed to be for the year, but at the Christmas break, he had heard about this Abbey of Gethsemane in Kentucky, and he took a train and spent a week there, and he had gotten draft papers, and he thought, wow, this would be a great life. And of course it is very beautiful there, and the atmosphere is so holy and uplifting. And he's a very sensual person, obviously. So he decided he would become a monk. And once he was a monk, he became a priest. They paid for his education and all, and his seminary. So he did go back and finished his year. They told him to. Now go back and finish your year and continue praying about this, because right then and there he decided he wanted to do that while he was there that week. And I'm starting to think maybe it was even subconsciously, maybe even consciously, a way out of going to war, because he was very pacifist. He did not want to be drafted. So it might have been a means out of that, in part, but also he was a spiritual thinker, a seeker, a writer, a poet, a dreamer, a visionary type person. So that's what happened, and he ended up going back then and staying with them, and then got into his affair later. And he started becoming so famous with his books, and they made lots of money. The Abbey did. His books sold and sold and sold, starting with his autobiography, and he became very popular. And for a Trappist, though, a cloistered Cistercian, they're to have vows of silence and stability. They stay put. But they allowed him to travel around the world speaking, and it was in Bangkok, where he went for a speech, and he was speaking about the Vietnam War, the anti-war effort, and that's when he got electrocuted and died instantly. Had taken a shower and stepped out and pulled a fan cord, and it had a short or something, electrocuted him immediately. But because he was going to have to go back, and they were moving him. They'd given him an option because they found out about his affair, and they gave him an option, go speak, do this speech, but when you come back, you're going to have to decide. We'll send you out to a new, they were starting a new monastery, Cistercian monastery in Redwood, California. Redwood, or up by the Redwoods, Northern California. Redlands, maybe it's called. And, or you're going to have to leave the monastery. Well, he didn't want that because he had his fame based there, and he would have, and they had the rights to his writings, so he wasn't going to have money. So he chose that he was going to go out there to California. That appealed to him, but he died. God had a different plan for him. because it was going, and they kept the scandal quiet for about 40 or 50 years after his death. Then they published his journals, which included his affair, and published his Asian writings, Asian Journal, and different things like that. So see what can happen when, with people. And so we can't just put all our eggs on somebody, because we're all sinners and we can get drawn off. But I was so thankful that I hadn't kept reading, and I was so crushed when I found out. And actually it weakened me too, because he was a major figure and his writings were so beautiful and so holy, but yet he was living otherwise. Not always, but toward the end. But fame, pride, it can do a lot to a person. So that's why, we always have to be very, very careful with ourselves. Humility is truly the biggest treasure we can have as far as the virtues. Humility is the best. And suffering is great for that, because this is a long story to tell you. My godmother then wanted to sort of be the one that I would turn to and lean upon and look to and be dependent on or whatever. Not intentionally, but it just happened, And then she got very upset then when I would talk to the priest. And I didn't realize then that some of those sisters, most of them, were very anti-priest. They were angry because they wanted Vatican II to change it and have women be priests. So they were very men-angry women. And that I realized that shortly, but not right then. Hadn't. But it helped when I saw just how envious and bitter she became, and she got nasty to me then. So I had to tell her we're going to have to be, friends in prayer and otherwise not, because I said this isn't good. Your relationship with me has turned negative. But because the priest was a better choice for guiding me with his experience and his training. It just was. So, and in other ways, he was great for me, because I didn't have that kind of a relationship with my dad that I could talk about much of substance. He was on a different level. He was very down to earth and more practical, and wasn't around that much. This gave me an opportunity to have a male figure, older male. Well, he was a little younger than my dad, maybe 3 years or something, 4 years, but that I could talk with about deeper things. Now, my dad I could, but it was more, who lived where, the history of the town, or things like that he was so good at, or fishing, or his golf, or his sails, where he traveled. But he didn't really talk much. It was mostly maybe watching Perry Mason with him on a Friday night or a Thursday night, whenever it was, and enjoying watching a movie or something. Because my sisters would be in college, or even before that, my sisters would be in high school and would go to the local place where all the kids went on Friday nights to dance, Friday and Saturday nights to dance. So that was what I did with Mom and Dad, was watch some shows that they enjoyed. So, and he wasn't a reader. My dad he liked Reader's Digest, but he wasn't a reader like my mother was. So just a different relationship, and Father liked to read, but why do you read these old books? Well, I said, I want to make sure that what I'm reading is solid, that it's been proven over the test of time, that who wrote it and the content of it, who they're writing about or what they're writing about, is solid. I don't want to be led astray by what I'm reading. And I said, the other reason is because it just gives me tremendous comfort to read things that were before the Reformation, because I love the idea that back then there wasn't this bickering back and forth, this anti-Catholic hatred and comments, and worse than, people killed Protestants and Catholics killing each other, like over in Switzerland and parts of Austria and would be eastern France and stuff. So it got very ugly. Well, in England, you know, when Henry VIII created his own church, the Anglican Church, because he didn't like that he was being told, no, you can't just kill your wife to get rid of her because you're not having a boy yet, or you can't have another divorce justified. You've already been divorced X amount of times, and still, you know, okay, the church has allowed that because of the reasons you gave, but it was becoming a big game. Get rid of this wife and get another one. Partly, too, he just liked women, but he also very much wanted a male heir, and so far hadn't had a woman that would produce one for him. So, and he killed one of them, had one of them killed, trumped up charges of something, and had her executed. So just stuff like that. You know, I just prefer reading something from the 12th century when we were all Catholics, we were all Christians, you know, and it wasn't all this divisiveness, and then it wasn't people going around trying to get other people to join their sect or their type of Christian church or whatever when they're already in one. And that's one thing I was so relieved. I've never heard Catholics or priests or anyone talking about going out and trying to get Protestants to leave their Protestant church, or to even talk with them, trying to proselytize them. They just don't do that. But I had all kinds of stuff. I would go to Bible studies and adult Sunday school, like in the Lutheran church, and even I was so heartbroken. This GP that I so admired, and he was leading the Sunday school, and he started in on the Catholics, stuff that I knew wasn't true. And he would say, you know, oh, they believe that, you know, the bread and the wine is the real body and the real blood, and it absolutely is not. That's just ridiculous. And I thought, well, I don't think it could be. You know, why not? You know, and God can do anything. So that really disappointed me. That was the only time I just thought, oh, not you too. And a tu brute, you know. So it really was discouraging, and he was very anti-Catholic. And see, within me, I had been already starting to wish that I could become Catholic, but I felt too beholden to that church because they had been so good to me and helpful to me, that I knew then, from the discussion from the other people, so much Catholic hatred, that I knew that they would just be broken if I went to the Catholic church there in that town. So that was another reason why, when God started, you know, every night a dream, I was to take the children and move back to my hometown in the Midwest. But I thought, well, there I certainly can't because my family's there. But that's exactly where he wanted it to happen. And I had to have the courage to do it, and God gave me the courage. So, but it wasn't easy. I have to say it wasn't easy, but it's worked out very well for me, except other people would think, well, look how they've treated you, you know, oh, how terrible. Well, yes, it is terrible. It's a shame, but God had to get me to where he wanted me to be, and I wasn't listening to God. I knew I was a hermit, but I didn't realize to the degree of type of hermit. You know, a historic traditional hermit, one of the holy narrow pathway, one of the desert, not having a foot in both worlds, not involved in parishes, not involved in running soup kitchens and things. So that was it. That my hermit life became right after God had me plucked out of the soup kitchen. So because he had a plan for me, but that was actually sort of a penance that I had to do the soup kitchen. So anyway, it's just interesting how God guides us where we need to be when we're not easily moved. by, by common sense of what we should do. And that's me. That's me. So here's a poem I want to read, though. Oh, maybe I should leave this well enough alone. I'll read it, I guess. It's something that my mother said once, because I really feel for people. I have a lot of compassion, and I like to pray for people. And when people are mistreated or proselytized, for example, it really upsets me, and I feel for the families involved. Doesn't matter in what way or who the people are, what the church is that's doing it, or the group or anything. It's the fact that they do it to another person, and it's a hijacking, it's a kidnapping, it's a brainwashing and kidnapping, intentional. But that's in the other video, I explain that. But my mother said, you don't have to take, it was on the phone, long distance, you don't have to take on the sorrows of the world. You don't have to do that. Just stop all the praying, all these getting involved in people's lives where there's so much suffering. You've got your own suffering to deal with. Well, she was wanting to protect me. She loved me. She didn't want me to take on the sorrows of the world. But see, that's exactly what the Lord wanted, though, as a victim soul. And for all of us, in a sense, to bear the sufferings of one another in love. So I was slouched on the sofa, in my little laptop on my lap. I had a little tiny laptop back then. And laying down on the sofa, pillows behind, knees bent, my usual position. And I was there, it's my laptop open and everything and on. And this thought came into my head. It was this question, and why not take on the sorrows of the world? And why not take on the sorrows of the world? The screaming, crying, painful aches of silent soul and reeling mind. Eat the bread and drink the blood and become the heart of everyone. Say goodbye to what is known and loved in this our graveyard of frivolity. Tear the bark from naked tree and clothe ourselves like drapery upon a cross of which we know nothing and understand less. Become the sword that pierces flesh, skewers and entwines beloved, twists and binds us to his wound, weeps and throbs us in her breast. O Mary, cleft from child Jesus, broken at the cross, let me feel your pain and that of others who suffer the sorrows of the world. So that's what came out, and that was the answer that God wanted me to have. And I never showed it to my mother, because why? I knew she was just trying to be maternal and didn't want me to have any sufferings at all. She very much considered suffering as a terrible thing and something to be gotten rid of however we could. And yes, if there are means, like, I'm not going without pain meds and being crazy and killing myself because of suffering. I don't worship suffering. One point she says, oh, don't be Catholic. They glorify suffering. They worship suffering. And they just stare at the crucifix and all the blood. And see, she just didn't understand, but she does now. That's good. And that's one consolation for anyone whose children, or adult or otherwise, have left Christianity or whatever religion, who have left the religion and the faith of their family, and especially the Christian faith, because it is so beat up, and of that, Catholicism is so maligned beyond any other. And I think it has to do with the fact that it is so broad spread. It's been for all the centuries, and it's still going, and it's still growing, and it's nearly 1.4 billion people in the world, by far the largest church, and it's not going away, no matter what people say or what kind of killing they do of Christians in Nigeria. It's going to continue in Nigeria, and it's growing in Nigeria. and whatever other places. So it's it's just how it is. And so, but taking on the sorrows of the world doesn't mean that we self-masochate or become masochists ourselves, or that we make ourselves suffer. No. Taking on the sorrows of another means praying and helping to bear their cross. Lift them up, encourage, do tangible acts, corporal works of mercy, of love, to help lighten their load, whatever might help. And for any need they have. That's taking on the sorrows of the world. And being aware of the sorrows. Being aware of other groups that are persecuted. Championing those who are denied civil liberties and who are maligned in whatever way. That we take on the sorrows of others and lift them up. So that's what we do. O Mary, cleft from child Jesus, broken at the cross, let me feel your pain and that of others who suffer the sorrows of the world. Excuse my voice, I'm losing it. It'll come back. Don't worry, I'll keep blabbing. God bless you all. Much love to you all. And let's pray. Let's pray for people whose loved ones have been kidnapped, essentially. Kidnapped from what they believed and wanted to believe, or their family believed. It's usually good, like that one hermit, ancient hermit said, follow in the footprints of your pack. Follow in your family group, in other words. Stay with your tribe. And then later on, when you're an adult, or when you're not in a vulnerable position, and you're praying and God guides you, and it's not the devil, then that's different. If God wants you in a different place. But okay, I'll stop talking here. God bless you all.